one of the most accomplished black men in medical history, Ben Carson, went on Fox News the other day and had some very interesting and, quite frankly, I find infuriating takes on race in America and talking about how Joe Biden is, quote, dividing the country. Now, he says a lot of things, and we're going to get to the clip, but basically he talks about how it was real racism when he grew up and how now people are using race as a political tool. People want black people to believe that they're victims, and not to mention on top of all that, he also says that apparently the rest of us are not using our brains. But you know what? You don't need to hear it from me. I want you to hear it from him.
Joining me now is Dr. Ben Carson, former Housing and Urban Development Secretary. Dr. Carson, your reaction to today's executive actions and Susan Rice's announcement of them?
Well, it's pretty amazing how people try to frame everything racially and how they create divisions among our society. You know, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and I can tell you what real racism was like. It was an everyday event. The world is very different here in America right now. And, you know, to use race as a mechanism to obtain power and position, I think is really quite shameful. And in fact, race relationships have deteriorated. Why have they deteriorated? Because of the great emphasis trying to create white guilt and black victimhood. Those are two very bad things, and when you put them together, it results in some policies that absolutely make no sense. So the real conflict here is between common sense and idiocy. That's what's really going on.
Now, on PBS tonight, responding to the criticisms of the Biden executive actions, Susan Rice said this.
It's a bit rich, frankly, for Republicans to suggest that by trying to lift up everybody, we are dividing America. We just had 4 years of the most divisive, vitriolic presidency that one can imagine. And that division was a political strategy. And thankfully, it hasn't worked because it is not what the American people want.
Dr. Carson, not only record low unemployment, record wage growth, and criminal justice reform, community engagement with new investment in inner city, an attempt to reach out, opportunity zones. None of it registers because they don't want it to register.
Yeah, well, they're saying, don't believe your eyes, just believe what we're telling you. And you are a victim, and these people are oppressing you. And I appeal to the American people to stop listening to the foolishness and use your brain and believe what you see and what you feel.
Okay, so we need to use our brains, our common sense, and also talk about what we see, think, and feel. First of all, those things are contradictory. Using your brain versus your feelings is very contradictory. Like being like how you feel emotionally versus, first of all, Ben, this is how we feel. And as a black person, this is how I feel. I feel that America is racist. Sorry. And it's also, by the way, it's also what I think, and it's also what I experience. Since you want to go down that path, I experience it every day. As a child, pretty much, 18 years old, so technically an adult, but still very childlike. I was walking to Walmart with my brother, and I had a gun pulled out on me by a police officer for no reason. Absolutely no reason. This type of stuff happens every day. I've been followed around in stores. Sometime when I walk, people walk to the other side of the street. When I walk through white neighborhoods, people lock their car doors. You know that little dun dun? You can hear it when people lock their car doors when I walk by them. You cannot tell me that racism does not exist and that the racism you went through is the real racism, but the racism that people like me and others in this country who are black, as well as people who are non-white or non-white passing, go through every single day. The car thing happens so often, I ignore it now. Like, this type of stuff happens every single day. So for you to say that, oh, the majority of Americans are good people and that racism is not really a problem today like it was, that's ridiculous. Racism is still here. Look at our prison system. Our prison system locks up black people. There's a huge disparity. Black people are overrepresented in the prison population, which, by the way, America locks up more prisoners than any other country, including China. So that's a problem. But, yes, black people are more likely to experience racism from police, more likely to be locked up, given long sentences for petty crimes, and not experience leniency. Black children are typically looked at as menacing when they cause trouble, while white kids are looked at as the child will be child. You know, all this type of stuff. I mean, when you become rich like Ben Carson, you become a multimillionaire and you cozy up to people like Donald Trump and you serve in his administration, you become out of touch with the average black person. And I'm sorry. You do. It's a fact. You're out of touch. Period. And you clearly have not made a conscious effort to stay in touch. Now, beyond that, let's talk about let's talk about the executive order that he is criticizing that Joe Biden has signed. Joe Biden signed an executive order to address housing discrimination in the black community. Because what has happened, historically speaking, black people have been discriminated by the federal government when it came to housing. Black people, by the way, who lived in project housing, and white people who lived in project housing were treated completely differently. Now, for those of you who don't know the history, the projects was originally not for poor people. It was for middle-class working people because there was a housing shortage. So what happened was, when we had this housing shortage, they said, hey, these are middle-class people. They have money, but they can't find a house. Let's build temporary housing for them. They have to be able to pay their rent. And within a few years, we're going to build houses for them that they can buy in the suburbs. So the federal government worked with the banks to block these middle-class black people from buying these houses. These houses were on sale for about $50,000 at the time. You know, now they're $90,000, which would be $90,000 in, today's money. And so any middle-class person can afford a $90,000 house. The federal government worked with private investors and banks to keep black people from buying these houses. So the resulting thing was that the black people had to stay in the projects. Now, later on, things came about, like, say, the war on drugs, and also the white people's houses tripled in value. They were able to take out equity, send their kids to college. The blacks were not, because they were never afforded the opportunity. So over time, these middle-class white people got wealthy. And, that's why we have the suburbs the way we do today. And the black people did not get wealthy. They got poorer because they were cut off from opportunity. So poor, in fact, that eventually the government had to subsidize this program that was originally intended for middle-class people, because now everyone who was in these houses were poor. The houses that were left vacant by white people, more poor black people moved in because they didn't have opportunity. And it's been like that ever since. So Joe Biden signed an executive order to start addressing the housing discrepancies and try to get opportunities for housing for African American people. He also signed an executive order to get FEMA aid to people on reservations because due to the pandemic, because they weren't, there was a lot of aid that previously they had not been able to get. He also there's something in the executive order, too, about protecting their lands and their sovereignty. These are all because, historically speaking, what has Americans done? We've taken their land for federal projects or for white people or for anything else. So these are things, and I don't want you to think that, these things don't go on anymore. These things are going on today. Look at subprime mortgages. Black families were twice as likely to get a subprime mortgage, which is a terrible, terrible mortgage that's basically designed to screw you. We're more likely to get a subprime mortgage than a white family. During the subprime mortgage crisis, African Americans or black people lost so much of their housing because of these predatory loan systems. And these predatory loan systems were basically allowed by the federal government, and they turned a blind eye, and the community suffered. We lost housing. So the fact that Joe Biden wants to do something about the housing crisis, wants to protect Native Americans' land, and wants to address xenophobia and people mistreating Asian people because of coronavirus, which, by the way, that's been going on a lot. I have a friend, she's in the same industry as me, and when she's working, you know, people walk away from her. People say, oh, she probably has the China virus. People say this stuff out loud. People yell at her and threaten her because she's Asian, and because they associate Asian people with China and with the coronavirus. Now, I wonder whose idea that was. You know, clearly it was Biden's. Oh, wait, that was Donald Trump. Donald Trump was saying this. So, and which gets back to my original point. Ben, you talking about Joe Biden dividing by using race. You participated in one of the most divisive administrations in American history. One of the most divisive administrations in American history. This man literally used people's racism against immigrants, talking about building a wall so that he could get votes and get elected. Which, by the way, is a wall that he never actually finished, that barely got built. You know, and thankfully, Biden is stopping that waste of taxpayer money. You want to talk about, conservatives want to talk about waste of taxpayer money. Building a wall is a waste of taxpayer money, but I digress. He used racism to get elected. And then when it comes to black people, oh, look at my African American over there. Like, what? So to act like Donald Trump was not racist and was not divisive to the country just because you're in his administration, I'm sorry, you're a sellout. You're a sellout, Ben. That's it. That's all you are, Ben. I'm sorry. And I hate to say it because he's a very successful African American. He's one of the first, he's the first black doctor that I ever learned about in school. You know, because a lot of the other doctors we learned about were white. And, you know, we learned about him during Black History Month. He did a lot of amazing things. Very intelligent man, very smart. But he's a sellout. He's completely drank the Kool-Aid and he sold out. I'm sorry. There's no other way to put it. And it hurts me to say it when you look up to somebody as a child. But as an adult, I must say he's a sellout, man. He's a sellout. Yeah, now, to be fair, yes, it is true that oftentimes some people on the left, and definitely the neoliberals, do play into the identity politics thing where they're like, oh, all white people are bad, all minorities good. Basically, that's an oversimplification, but yes, that is done. And yes, that does piss a lot of people off. But neoliberals were doing identity politics under the Obama administration. And even before then, the country wasn't this divided. Trump has literally divided the country. And I've seen people who never hated immigrants, never had a problem with immigrants, all of a sudden get caught up in Trumpism, and now they hate anybody who's not born in this country. I've seen it. So you want to talk about what we've seen and what we've experienced and what we know. I have seen, experienced, and known that. Now, also I'm going to get to the hypocrisy of Ben Carson having the audacity to criticize Joe Biden for making this executive order. When Donald Trump made his executive order and did things for the black community, when Donald Trump signed the First Step Act to help people of color, specifically black people, get back into society after they get out of prison, and when Donald Trump pardoned a lot of black nonviolent first-time drug offenders, you guys said, oh, this is great. He's doing things for the black community. He's really helping the black community. Now when Biden wants to do similar style things like, closing private prisons, which, to be fair, he didn't close nearly enough, and we're going to get to that later. But closing private prisons or ending some partnerships with private prisons, trying to get equal opportunity for housing for blacks, and trying to reverse some of the damage that these federal programs, racist federal programs, have done over the years. Now you want to criticize them for playing politics, identity politics, and dividing the country. That's ridiculous. And you know what? As a black person, quite frankly, I'm tired of being used as a pawn for the media. I'm tired of the media saying, hey, this guy did something for black people, he's good. Oh, this guy's acting like racism. It's like, just stop it. And I hope Republicans know it is the reasons like this. Like, if you keep bringing people like Ben Carson on Fox News, keep doing it, we are not going to vote for you. We will never vote for you. You will never get our vote. Like, I'm sorry, but if you want to try to convince me to be black conservative, and the best thing you can throw at me is Ben Carson and maybe Candace Owens, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Like, I can't stand it. I cannot stand it. And this shows you, like, Fox, they only allow certain type of black people on their shows. Like Laura Ingraham, she'll interview, if you notice, like, she'll interview different people, but I'm not saying she only interviews conservatives, but if you notice, even the liberals that she interviews, they tend to be people who are well respected in society, and they'll be like, oh, I don't agree with you on everything, but I like what you're saying, well respected black people in society who everybody tends to like, or they'll just be conservatives who agree with her views. And, they'll invite like Ben Carson or Candace Owens, for instance. Actually, I think Candace is now a Fox contributor. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there was a football player who was a black conservative who I had on the show the other day because he defended Drew Brees' connection with Focus on the Family when Focus on the Family's, homophobia against gay people in their attempt to block gay marriage resurfaced. I forget what the football player's name is, but he's a black guy, running back. He defended Drew Brees. So they're like, oh, he's part of the conservative team. Let me have him on. And they asked him about people taking the knee, and he was totally supportive. He said, yes, there's racism, blah, blah, blah. And then they basically tried to cut his interview off. You know what that shows me? That shows me that I can have all the same conservative views as you. And if my outlook on race is different, there's no place for me in your party. So therefore, there is no place for African Americans in the Republican Party. There is no place. Unless you just are like Ben Carson, or racism died in the 60s, it doesn't exist. And most black people do not believe that, have not experienced that, do not think that, have not seen that. So there's no place for us in that party. Period. None. Absolutely none. No place. Because we could agree on everything. Like my parents, you could be a Christian, you could agree on the definition of marriage, you could agree on that abortion is bad and should be banned. You can agree that we should have a national day of prayer, all that. And as soon as you say, hey, I'm black and I'm discriminated against, nope, we don't want you. And this is why people who are conservative and who otherwise would share your same ideology run to the Democratic Party. Because the Democratic Party at least makes an attempt to try to listen to our struggles and listen to what we have going on. Now, this does not mean that the Democratic Party is perfect. I do not, I'm very critical on this channel of the Democratic Party. One of the biggest things I did when I first started this channel, besides bashing Donald Trump, was also bashing Pelosi and the Democrats and Obama for, creating the situation we have now that led to Donald Trump. So, no, do I feel like that the Democratic Party is the perfect place for black people? Absolutely not. Do I feel like I am represented truly in the Democratic Party? No, I don't. But, there's nothing new. Being a black person in America, I don't feel like I am fully represented anywhere. However, at least these people, for all their flaws and for all the things I hate and criticize about the Democratic Party and the neoliberals, at least they make an attempt to accept us. At least they make an attempt to listen to our views. At least they make an attempt to try to reach across to us and to try to do things for us. Now, I would argue that what they do is not enough, not just for blacks, for anything, for climate change, for all the issues I care about. It's not enough. But at least they're taking a step. Republicans are like taking steps backwards. It's like you're getting worse over time. Like, listen to George H.W. Bush talk about racism, and then listen to Donald Trump talk about it. It's like a world of difference. Like, even the language, like the decorum, everything is just totally different. And I'm not one of those, like, oh, yes, proper decorum. I'm not one of those people. But at least make an attempt, bro. Like, at least try to act like you care. But yeah, Ben Carson's definitely a hypocrite. Because he participated in one of the most divisive administrations on the face of the planet ever in this country. I don't know about the face of the planet, but definitely in America. Yeah, he participated in that. And, you know, when Donald Trump did things for black people, it was so good. But now that Biden's doing it, he's dividing the country. You watch Trump divide the country for 4 years. Biden hasn't even been in office for 4 weeks. And here you are saying he's dividing the country. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely crazy. And it needs to stop. It needs to stop. I spent way too long in this video. This mostly was like another rant-styled video. And if you notice, guys, my videos have been getting longer lately. It's not on purpose. It's just, it is what it is. YouTube does seem to like it. But, you know, whatever. But, yeah, Ben Carson, come on, man. Come on, man. Like, Coon of the Year award. Seriously.